and you're very welcome back to the first Ladvice podcast episode of the year and the first podcast that I've got a guest on as well. I'm kindly joined today by Jack O'Neill. So welcome, Jack.
How's things, Nathan? You well?
I'm good. First time doing the podcast with a guest on, so hopefully I'm a decent enough interviewer, and hopefully we can provide some value and knowledge to the people who are listening. So I suppose I'll just give a bit of background as to how I know Jack, and I'll keep it short and sweet because I don't want to get into too much of the details. But I would have went on a 6-year holiday to Santa Ponza, and Jack would have been there as well through a mutual friend. So that's how we know each other, and I think from there, since I've been following him on social media and stuff, and I've been a fan of the content that he's been putting out, and hence why I wanted to get him on the podcast, because I think there's a lot of knowledge in that brain, and it'd be great to share that with the people who are listening. So, Jack, maybe just to start off, maybe just a little bit about you, where you're from, and what you're passionate about, I suppose.
Start off from the top, be easy. I'm from Castleknock in Dublin. I'm 26 years of age. I started off my early days playing a lot of sports. That's where I would have gotten into my background. So I played a lot of rugby, played a lot of GAA. As I got older, got into college, played rugby for Lansdowne, played for Leinster, Ireland, played the age grade stuff. After getting a bad injury, ended up then having to chose to decide to go down the road of academics. So ended up going into exercise physiology. And now I'm in the middle of my PhD in exercise physiology, so looking at low energy availability, so energy status, resting metabolism, a lot to do with exercise and changing body composition. It gets complicated there, but it's good information bring back. So
it's basically, I suppose, for the average Joe Soap who's into their fitness, they like to work out, they exercise, they might go on runs and do sports and stuff. You go a level deeper, and you're kind of getting behind the science of the physical anatomy and kind of high performance training and stuff like that, I suppose.
Yes, very deep into it. So like, I won't go into too much detail, but a lot of the stuff that I would look into is I look at your body's response to certain exercises and certain nutrition, so certain macronutrients, and what your body does in response to ingesting these or doing these exercises. So your body produces metabolites and proteins, and we can measure how much of these proteins or these metabolites you're producing in response to these exercises. And we'll then know at a deeper level what's happening in your body in response to those exercises. And everyone's going to be different. Everyone's response to exercise and nutrition is going to be unique. And we're looking at trying to optimize these responses. So you're never gonna nail and say this is the diet or this is the exercise. But what we're looking at is groups of exercises that are most likely going to be positive for most people, and types of food and stuff that are most likely going to be positive for most people. So that's the kind of stuff we're looking at.
Very good. I suppose like really at the heart and soul of kind of everything that you're doing, it is fitness. And I think fitness, particularly over the last year, I suppose, people have begun to appreciate it that little bit more. I think people always partook in it, and people always kind of understood that it was an important aspect of life. But I suppose now, with the limited amount of things that we can do in terms of socializing and going out and doing things that would have previously been a hobby or something that they're interested in, it's been taken away. So maybe the fitness aspect of it has become of greater importance to people.
Hugely, massively. And a big thing that I've noticed as well is that although people would have had fitness incorporated into their life in the year, like before COVID-19 somehow, now that a lot of people are working from home or are not working, we have more time, more spare time than we've ever had. And it's difficult to fill it with a lot of the things that you want to do. So like it's tempting to go to the PlayStation Road, it's tempting to go, binge on the Netflix and stuff. However, keeping up the exercise is going to be crucial, because you're going to be missing out on a lot of stuff that you would have been doing. Like not just exercise in terms of going to the gym and doing that or doing the class, even just going to work, walking around the office or walking around the place that you're actually doing. Like these are all like bits of exercise or physical activity that we're not really conscious of or thinking of. However, they contribute to a much healthier mind-body system in the long run. And all of a sudden you have people now staying at home that are not getting these steps in, that are not, going around the office, that are not walking back and forth to the car. They all add up. And in the grand, like now you have an issue where it's even more difficult to try and get those steps in through exercise. So now, more so than ever before, actually scheduling that exercise and penciling in, this is where I'm going to complete, whether it's this many steps or this distance or complete the gym session here, is never been more important.
Yeah, I definitely think so. And I suppose it's a really important touch point is the whole thing of that kind of passive exercise, I suppose, where you're exercising without really actually, I suppose, putting in an effort or a sole focus on doing exercise. It's just something that's happening throughout the day. I suppose we are limited in what we can do or where we can go now, and it has seen the emergence of home workouts, and people are getting stuck into them. And I do think it is kind of, and you mentioned it as well, it's not just for the body, but it's for the mind as well. I think if you can get stuck into a bit of a slump, and you can kind of say, well, I'm going to just lounge around and I won't do anything. And I think then that becomes a routine that's not actually planned, but it becomes a routine, and it's something that you slip into, and you kind of, by not exercising, you can almost feel lethargic and kind of tired purely on the basis that you're just not doing anything, and your body kind of goes into that by default. So
yeah, you can get tired from doing nothing. Like it's a paradox in itself when you think about it. Like, I'm even more tired from doing less stuff than what I've normally been doing. And like, people need to realize that exercise, yes, it is one thing. It changes body size. It changes, people look at it in terms of building muscle, losing fat, that kind of exercise. But what's happening at a physiological level, right down at a cellular level, not only within the body, but within the brain, there is thousands of these little processes occurring every time you lift up a weight, every time you go for a run, every time you even just go for a walk. And the absence of these processes for a long period of time can lead to different thinking patterns, because we know that, the brain thinks because of the way the body feels, and the body can feel because of the way the brain thinks. There's a psychophysical connection. The two of them, we don't really know the exact connection, but there is a response. So by you reducing all this, like these physiological processes by happening by not exercising, your thought process can even begin to change. And it begin now, that's where sometimes it can be, you'll sometimes get into these slumps, and it can be quite difficult to get out of it. Just from your thought processing alone, you start questioning what's the point and stuff, like, why am I even bothering trying this? I'm just better off, doing this, and that's the exact problem with the whole thing, that you have to try and get yourself and force yourself through that and begin the exercising is by getting a couple of exercise sessions under the belt, then that the mindset, the thought processing will begin to change positively again. So it's difficult. It can be difficult. It's great if you're already in that positive mindset and you got that training session turning out and you're just one of those freaks that just loves knocking out the exercise and stuff. But if you are in a difficult spot, it's even more important to begin putting something in place to get yourself going, and the mind will soon follow.
I have had a conversation with people about this, I suppose, over the last year, but maybe in particular during the winter period, because the appetite or the desire to get out and kind of go for a walk or exercise has been reduced somewhat based on just the climate outside. It's not exactly encouraging to step outside the door into the freezing cold. But I suppose something that I've said to people, and I bring it, because I don't have the understanding that you might have, I bring it very much down to just, very simplistic terms, and say, or trying to apply what I do know, or how I kind of feel when I'm doing workouts and stuff, is momentum can go both ways. Momentum can be in a positive sense where, if you're doing workouts, it's easier to do the next one, it's easier to do the next one. But the longer you leave something and put it off, the harder then it becomes to actually then go and do it, because there's this kind of wall built up, and it's like, oh, well, geez, that's such a big task and I have to go and do that. But once you actually then just go and do it, the next time it's easier, the next time it's easier, the next time it's easier. And I think you don't want to try and take on the world in your first day of doing an exercise. And exercise doesn't have to be, banging out a gym session where you're lifting really heavy weights. It could just be something as simple as starting off with a walk, turning a walk into, let's do 1 kilometer as a walk, and then maybe even 500 meters as a jog and stuff like that, and just building it up from there, I suppose. And it's about instilling those positive outlets into your day, and then something that you can maintain, as opposed to something that you're kind of going, oh, well, fuck, I have to go and do that again.
Yeah, 100%. And your analogy of momentum going both ways is absolutely spot on, because that does happen not only in a a psychological sense, but it also happens in a physiological sense as well. You know, if you don't keep up with your training, you get maladaptations, or that's known as reverse adaptations. So by continuing your training sessions, you'll get fitter and fitter and fitter, or stronger and stronger. However, if you stop stimulating or exercising, your body's need to keep adapting will begin to slow down, up until the point where in extreme cases, like over a month or so, you'll actually get reverse adaptation. So you look at any ex-bodybuilders and all of a sudden they look like average Joes. Where's all the muscle gone? It's because they're not training anymore. Their body doesn't need the muscle. That's an extreme example, but it can happen where as you increase the amount of time that you're not training, your body then reduces the amount that it actually needs to prepare itself for exercise. So keeping up regular, enjoyable, like exercise that's enjoying is crucial. Like for my, like anytime I prescribe someone exercise who's just, as you would say, might say an average Joe, or someone who's not like not an elite level athlete, or someone who's not competing for something in particular, their most important thing for their gym program is adherence, meaning they have a program that they'll continue to keep coming back. Even if it means that the program is slightly suboptimal or not as effective as it could be, or not as, maximized towards one specific goal, as long as that individual keeps coming back in the long run, that is one of the most important things when programming for your average Joe. They don't have to be doing the greatest exercise or the best exercise. They just got to keep coming back.
Like, got to keep moving, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you can do, because then they will maintain that program for 6 months, a year, 2 years. Whereas if you program someone too heavily at the beginning, you'll notice, they hang on to it for 4 weeks, or they keep those 5-mile runs every day for a while, but then eventually they just teeter off and they're back in the hole again, and you've just it's too much too soon.
I think it kind of leads nicely onto something that I want to discuss, and I suppose it's kind of, it's the attention and the emergence and the emphasis that's been put on the health and the fitness industry over the last, I think it's really coming along in the last 5 years. Maybe that's just my observation, I suppose.
Instagram,
you kind of see it coming out, I suppose, with the amount of time that people spend on social media and stuff, and the amount of personal trainers and people who are within that industry online who do share it. It kind of then promotes people to engage with it and give their time to it as well. So I think over the last while it has become much more prevalent in society, and I think with that comes a lot of positives and possibly some negatives as well. I suppose one of the, I don't want to start off on the negatives, but one of the positive things that maybe we could touch on is the fact that for people now, information and workouts and routines and stuff, they're more accessible than ever before. And someone who previously had diddly squat knowledge of anything to do with the gym, going in and wouldn't know how to do any exercises, now that it's been presented and put in front of them on a phone that they would already be on regardless, is encouraging people to get into fitness and feel more comfortable with doing that as well, because of the removal of kind of, well, where the fuck do I start kind of thing. So in terms of the other positives that have come from the increased interest and the increased participation within the health and fitness industry, would there be any other kind of positives that you've seen, or other positives that maybe you've taken from it? Obviously, you're quite immersed in it, and you're obviously extremely passionate about it as well.
So, like the positives from technology and its effects on, well,
it could be technology, or it could just be the actual positives about health and fitness industry in general, I suppose. Well, yeah, in general, I suppose, but with particular emphasis on like how it's grown and why it's grown.
Like, well, first of all, technology, like today's technology, has allowed access to information more so than we have ever had, like over like the past 100 years. So like you literally you just say, hey Siri, hey Alexa, tell me about blah, and you got that information, as much of that information as you want. But what I have noticed is exercise becoming a lot more desirable to people who would never normally see themselves as exercisers. So like people that would generally accept, like they accept that they might not be an athlete, or they might not play sports, or they might not compete for something in particular. However, there's a much bigger understanding that exercise is so crucial towards maintaining optimal body health, physical health, psychological health, and also just giving yourself a better general sense of well-being. So there's a lot more people that I've known never to be athletes or never to be interested in sports. However, they have a much better understanding now from the likes of social media and from the access that they have on the internet that exercising is like, it's something you got to incorporate into your life somehow.
Yeah, and I suppose the thing with social media is as well, it kind of creates that kind of community feel or that sense of involvement, and even that whole thing of, well, you know, someone who previously said, well, look, I'm not a sports person, or I'm not an athlete, and exercise just isn't for me. I think an encouraging aspect or an encouraging factor would be seeing maybe people who are a similar body composition to them or a similar background to them in terms of maybe it's just career path or maybe it's just where they're from, and then kind of being able to say, well, it's sort of inspiration in a sense where they can say, well, if he can do it or if she can do it, then definitely I can do it, and then that kind of gets the ball rolling from there and allows them to kind of pursue.
Yeah, and it's much more accepting of everyone. You know, you don't have to be ripped and shredded to be a part of the health and fitness community. Anyone can be a part of the health and fitness community, which is one of the pros, as you said. But then it could also, that's where it ties into, that's where it gets a bit murky, that's where it gets a bit grey, because yes, the health and fitness industry is very accepting of everyone, because everyone, like, it's meant for everyone. You know, there is no individual who cannot exercise in some form or matter, you know, and be fit in their own way. But what happens with that is you then have people portraying, they tell you the information that is acceptable for everyone, yes, but then you have people portraying that they might not be saying it, but the person who's telling you to be, you know, healthy and everything is also, you know, 4% body fat, or might be using performance enhancing drugs, or might be, you know, they're absolutely shredded themselves, and they might indirectly be relating, you know, they might be putting that pressure on that there's a certain body type that needs to be associated with health and fitness. And it's definitely, that is present in the health and fitness world, that you have female athletes who are all about the booty and the thing, you know, and it needs to be the biggest thing going and all that kind of stuff. And then you have the men who need to be, you got to have bicep veins that look like hoses, and you got to have shoulders, like you got to have difficulty walking through a door if you want to be part of the thing. Like, but like, there's those extremes are, there's no, at the minute, there's no real understanding of why, no one's explaining why those extremes are unattainable to most people who partake in health and fitness. No one's explaining why that's just not going to be achieved by 90% of the people who begin training. Or no one's explaining why those kind of states of body are not actually necessarily that healthy or that fit at all in the first place. That's what's kind of lacking now, especially in terms of social media. No one's actually stepping forward and saying, hey, look, these super shredded, ridiculous, beautiful people are not actually, you know, that healthy, or you know, they're doing things that are actually quite dangerous to themselves in the long run just to obtain that certain physique. No one's actually going into explaining this, and I think that it definitely needs to be that delivered. That message also needs to be delivered along with the inclusivity of everyone for health and fitness. That's the key missing factor.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and it's something that I definitely wanted to discuss as well on the podcast. And it's something that I suppose, with the little knowledge that I have, would have tried to explain as well, with regards to just, I suppose, like your physique and your oh my God, what's the word? Anyway,
it's gone.
Something that I tried to promote previously.
We'll come back to it.
Yeah, we'll come back to it. But I do think it goes both ways with regards to that. I think, firstly, there's an ownership on, let's say, me as an individual who isn't someone who's shredded, got abs, built like a shit brick house. There's an ownership on me to say, well, okay, firstly, I see the Instagram picture, I see the image that's portrayed, and I say, oh, well, I want that. Well, okay, Nathan, I think you need to be conscious about it and say, well, in order to get that, it's not gonna come like by just going out the back and lifting weights aimlessly and doing it for, you know, maybe 2-3 days a week when you feel like it. There is a lot of sacrifice and there is a lot of effort that goes in behind that. So I think that's one aspect. There's an ownership and an accountability on the person who
the individual, the
receiving,
receiver of that information,
receiving the information. And then I suppose on the flip side, then again, is there's an ownership on. There isn't necessarily an ownership, because I suppose they can do whatever they want to do, and it's if they want to post it, they can post it. But I suppose when we're talking about the health and fitness industry, and for the most part, it's PTs and stuff that have that kind of physique, or it's someone who is very much immersed in the fitness industry, because you don't get it overnight. It just doesn't happen. So I suppose it's for them to make a decision as to whether am I posting this picture in order to show off and look good and kind of, I suppose, advertise my services that you can get this, or am I posting this to, I suppose, one, brand myself and kind of portray the image that I have, and also make people aware of the fact and the story behind this physique. Because again, like people see the abs, people see the muscles, and then they say, oh yeah, well, I want it, but they don't know the sacrifice and the stuff that goes on behind the scenes with regards to that as well. So you'll be in a much better position to kind of maybe talk about some of that kind of sacrifice, the effort, and everything else that goes with it to kind of obtain that physique.
Of course. And just to go back and touch on real quickly the points of, these individuals, they're posting these things because a lot of them, they have their own businesses, and when you're rich, or when you have a great booty in the picture, or when you have great abs in the picture, you're going to receive more engagement. You're going to have people spend more time putting that on the screen when they're watching their Instagram. The Instagram algorithms know this, which then spreads it out to more and more people. So when you're looking to maximize outreach and you're looking to put food on the table, you're looking to like grow your business, you're going to have to make these decisions, and of course I understand that completely. But definitely going forward, there is like the need to not falsely advertise that, yes, it's okay to use these great pictures to, maximize outreach and stuff, but there needs to also be like almost a disclaimer along with this that, hey, this 6-week program training twice a week that I'm giving out is not going to get you to this straight away. Like there's a lot more to it, but there needs to be like, there's no connection between the two, if you get me. So that would definitely be my point on that. And then to go back now to touch on the requirements to look like, to have a phenomenal physique and to look at your best, when you're talking about these shredded people. First of all, usually muscle maturity is something that comes into it, which only really starts to happen 10 to 15 years after you begin lifting weights. So unless you started at like 12 years of age, 13 years of age, and continue that process for 10, 15 years, if you wanted to have like that large muscle mass that you see on pro bodybuilders, and like to see on like the natural bodybuilders, maybe not the pro bodybuilders, but the natural bodybuilders, it takes 10 plus years of consistent training, which is going to include lots of failures. When you're talking about, it's also changes to body fat levels. Your body is really sensitive to changes that are too quick. If your changes and reductions in body fats are too tense or too severe, you usually get bad, or you get like negative changes to hormonal levels, to satiety hormones, so hormones that are responsible for your hunger and everything. So when you get down to these very low body fat levels in too quick or too severe methods, your body usually results end up bouncing back. You see people, they cut a load of weight, so after 6 weeks, and then 10, 12 weeks after that, they're back to square one again. So seeing people that are continually lean, like all year round, that don't seem to bounce in and out, they've usually gotten to that level of body fat over again the space of 5 plus years, 10 plus years of hard, consistent training. Then to maintain those levels of body fat and that level of musculature requires smart, specific, measurable, like, so it's a level of training that people don't seem to understand. Like most people that look like that, they're not drinking at all throughout the year. They may drink once or twice in the year. They're also not eating takeaways. They're not eating chocolates. They have a large amount of cognitive restraints on their foods. You ask, if you were to interview a lot of these individuals, they'll inform you, I have to physically hold myself back from chocolates. I have to physically hold myself back from burgers and chips, which is not also healthy for the mind either in the long run.
Sorry, just one thing on the mind and stuff is, like I think it's something that I said previously, and it was basically, if you're looking to sacrifice your mind in order to obtain a certain physique, it's not really the best way to go about it, because ultimately your mind is just as important, and if not as or more important than your body, because
Of
I mean
course,
it controls
100%.
everything else. So yeah, sorry, just to think I
Yeah,
emphasize
no,
that
no,
point.
that's good. Yeah, and because you have, like, you'll notice these people are continually and willingly preventing themselves from eating these foods, and a lot of the time, especially if you're not well rehearsed in how to count calories and how to appropriately distribute macronutrients, so like carbs, proteins, fats throughout the day, like it is possible to be shredded and to include small amounts of these foods. However, most people that usually go on these journeys, they just read that, oh, plain broccoli, plain chicken, and I'm good to
Yeah,
go. And
yeah.
what happens then is they do this process and they repeat this process for a long period of time, and they get into ridiculous shape. However, now they're at a point where, because they never really took the time to kind of just take their time slowly with it, educate themselves, understanding the effect, like the purposes of a calorie, what a fat is, to understand these whole processes and developing a good nutritional plan, they're now stuck where, if I eat anything else except broccoli and chicken, I start getting fat, and the thing then is, you're then left in this real, like, dark place in your mind where you have to continue to, for you to maintain this
Yeah.
physique, you then have to continue on this dark road where you'll get people, they can't even look at ice cream, they can't do that, they can't go out with friends, they can't go out, eating food and stuff, or, it's going out for dinners and family dinners, or they have to bring their own food and everything to these occasions. And a lot of the time, people don't, as you mentioned, people don't see, first of all, these sacrifices, like, because some people will do this and be highly aware. So yes, they are restricting themselves, but they want to reach that such low level of body fat, so they want to have that such high level of musculature that they are aware of the sacrifice they have to make. But we don't see any of these sacrifices that are occurring.
I think that sorry.
Yeah, and then so that brings into the point of, you're scrolling down your newsfeed, you see these phenomenal physiques and stuff, and you wonder what it's like to achieve that. You don't usually see that the negatives of having such low levels of body fat can have on the body. So, like, being usually, to obtain these levels of body fat to such low levels, you have to be in what we refer to as a low energy availability state. And what happens when you're in a low energy availability state for too long of a period? So when you're talking 8-12 weeks plus, you'll start noticing reproductive dysfunction. So for females in particular, they'll have cessation of their period. And for males, you'll notice a reduced amount of libido. It'll be more difficult to have an erection. It's harder to have any of these, sexual thoughts or ideologies. You then have trouble keeping your body warm. You'll notice that you're freezing cold all the time. So because your body is not getting the energy that it needs to maintain these levels of body fat, it no longer continues to warm itself appropriately. So you'll notice your hands are cold, feet are cold, you'll be shivering a lot. You'll begin having GI issues. So with your stomach, you'll noticing bad, whether it can be as bad as diarrhea. You'll notice a lot of severe bloating because your intestines are spending so much of their time empty from the lack of, or they're spending so much of their time too full with fiber that they can't actually extract energy from. You're getting a lot of bloating, you're getting a lot of constipation as well with this. Like, so there's a lot of other things that can happen to the body just to look that way, to look like the shreds that you have. Like, and a lot of the time people don't realize that to get to that level, there's that amount of sacrifice, and there's also those negative consequences of all those sacrifices as well on top of that.
Yeah, I think so. This is something that you do by choice, and it's something that you love to do. I think you described yourself as a super shredder on an Instagram post. So like, where has that come from, and where does the love for kind of, that's I suppose it's a love for a struggle, because obviously in order to obtain, because I don't think anyone does it, or I wouldn't imagine anyone just does all of this hard work and stuff purely for the end product, to say, look in the mirror and say, there it is, I got it. Like, there has to be a greater desire, or there has to be some more motivation behind it than than an end product. I think, is it enjoying the kind of the the slog, enjoying the endurance, enjoying the kind of the actual the movement and the training that it requires, and then I suppose the 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 strategic planning behind getting to that end result. Would that be
Yeah.
kind of where it comes from?
Oh, like for me personally, I wanna like how it began was watching Ziz videos. I don't know if anyone else, like there's probably a handful, like watching that guy, Australian dude, he had the tattoos, he had the tan, he had everything, he was
Yeah.
absolutely shredded, like, and he's getting the girls. And what you're seeing, like I'm speaking retrospectively here because I didn't have this knowledge that I have now back then when I was like 16. I just saw this man shredded, he was getting massive attention from anyone he went, everywhere he went to, from everyone, and you get addicted to that. So if you're like, God, if I can achieve that, I'll have that social status, and I'll have
Yeah.
that, and from having that social status, you're talking about that reward system in the brain. It makes you feel good, it makes you feel wanted. And that's where, like, being dead honest, that's where my desires for it started. I had no idea what low energy availability was. I had no idea what calorie counting or what macronutrients were or anything like this. I just as like a lot of people, I just went to the video, saw broccoli and chicken, and I was like, right, let's go. And it was just it was just from pure willpower. Because what was happening was, I remember feeling all these bad symptoms, so like the likes of getting cold, loss of reproductive function, all this, everything I listed off. I remember these, irritability, not able to sleep. But I said, doesn't matter. I have this, and I have a social status. That's what it was selfishness was why I got into, my fitness. I didn't understand there's the whole, I heard there was health aspect and everything of it. And also, like, I was playing rugby and stuff, and it's like, I just wanted it for that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until that I got really deep into, once I got into UCD and started going and going through the anatomy, the physiology, and understanding all of these systems, just actually what is going on. And I know it can be similar for a lot of other people, that they get addicted to this physical status that a great physique can get them into.
I suppose it's probably ego driven. The
100%.
the ego. I think the ego can drive a lot of life decisions, and sometimes for the right reasons, sometimes maybe for the wrong reasons. I think it's obviously, it evolves over time as well, and the more kind of the more, I suppose, self-aware, and the more aware you are of society, and kind of just aware of the world, it becomes more balanced, and it's not like driven purely based on kind of what my perception to the world is. It's based on what's right for me then, I suppose. But
and there's nothing wrong with that either. Like, ego is crucial. Like, for someone to be a bit egotistical and stuff, like, that's also someone who's motivated to do something as well. And what's really important is that people who are in that kind of position where they're really, things are going great and they're getting into great shape, it's the most important for them to really understand what's going on to their body. Because what can happen is they can do too much too soon, and by the time they're in their mid-20s, they can be burnt out, they can be run down. They're finding it impossible to maintain that physique whilst also maintaining a full-time job. They might then, to maintain their body, they might then make poor decisions, like resorting to the use of performance enhancing drugs and stuff to try and maintain it. And it's even more so important for those, because there's nothing wrong with being addicted to lifting weights and stuff. Like, it's cool.
There's far worse addictions in the world. So
yeah, like, and you look great, but the thing is, for those individuals, it's very important that they really understand what it actually is that's happening to their body for them to look like that, so that they can actually plan it out, not try and be the best they are every single minute of every single day, that they can understand that it's okay to be at 80% capacity of how you look, and they can time it, so that they're able to maintain their physique, not just for a couple of years in their mid-20s or so, that they can maintain this physique for hopefully what can be a lifetime. So it's the people that really want to get into it, or are very interested in health and fitness, it's very important for them to understand the effects of these extreme physiques that have on them. And it also needs to then trickle down to people who just want to be healthy and who want to be fit. It then comes down to them understanding the sacrifice that it takes to get to those extreme levels. So that it is okay if you want to be shredded, that's perfectly fine. But it's good that you understand what's happening,
Yeah, I think that's like a great synopsis of it. And then one of the questions would be, well, I've got a couple of questions. One of them would be around someone who is looking to go down the path of becoming shredded and obtaining that physique. Obviously, your desire for it and your kind of the birth of you going down that route and was watching YouTube videos. Would you say, if you were to look back and do it again, would you get a personal trainer, or would you get like some form of like a coach in order to like help you along that journey? Or do you think that kind of self exploration um was what you would do again? Like, because I think
Yeah.
to try and put it together in a more structured way, I think a lot of people who are into health and fitness kind of just go in and do it, and they expect to get results, and then disappointed when they don't get them, and that can be demotivating as well. Like, oh, I'm breaking my bollocks, I'm doing all this and that. But perhaps it's just they do need that bit more of an insight, or they do need that bit more industry knowledge in order to actually not train hard but train smart, and trying to
Yes.
like rather than going hell for leather and thinking that it's going to result in something, actually knowing that if I do A, B, C, D, and E, I'm going to get to where I want to be.
Yeah.
So would that be an advice from you to do that, or?
If it's someone who's serious about continuing their education, I would highly recommend doing something in college that would be associated with it. If it was someone like, so like, I'm going to kind of tear this down. So if it's someone who was like, this is I want to do this, I'd highly recommend that they choose an appropriate college course. So whether that be down the physiology route or health and performance science or sports science, there's plenty of them throughout the country as well. There's that. If it's not possible in college, the next one will be there are tons of PT courses that can be done either part-time, over 22 weeks, or full-time over 6 weeks, where you learn how to become a PT, where they do touch on these aspects of calorie counting, appropriate training styles, programming. So like that would also be another one for individuals as well. And going down from that, the effectiveness of coaches can be huge, especially if you're someone who doesn't really want to necessarily do all the thinking, or all, like, if you kind of want to be a part of it, but you don't necessarily want to ever learn to become a PT or ever learn the in-depth knowledge behind it all. Getting a coach is key, and the kind of coach you get is also crucial. So even if you're someone who necessarily doesn't really want to, like, some people just want to be, just give me the list of things to do and I'll do A to B and I'll like, that's it, I'm gone. Even those kind of individuals, it's still very important to have a coach that is some form of an educator, whether it's a small bit of education from each session, or whether it's, teaching you how to independently train yourself. Like, a good coach will prescribe you your training sessions, will give you programs for your nutrition as well. However, what they will do is, over time, they'll also explain to you why you're doing certain things, so that there's as much transparency as possible from between the coach and the actual individual doing it. So there's no hidden secrets. So the coach is explaining to the individual, this is the reason why you're eating this. This is the reason why you're training like this on Monday and Wednesday. So that over time, the individual becomes more, how would you say, in tune with their own training and more understanding of it. So when they get prescribed something, they go, oh, I know why I'm actually doing this. This is to help with my energy levels, or, this is to help with my long distance endurance capacity. Like, there's all these kind of things. So getting yourself a coach who kind of teaches you along the way, not necessarily holding your hand. You still want them to be like, you do what you need to do, like, and get you psyched up, but it also just gives you a little bit of explanation as to why they're prescribing these things to you, rather than show up, okay, set up a little circus, we run around the circuit, okay, bye. It's worth the investment. Usually a good coach will probably cost a little bit as well, but even just seeing someone once a week, like a decent PT once a week, who will then prescribe you 3 sessions, they supervise you for 1, but at least during that session they can explain to you why they're making these changes and stuff. It means that if you ever were to leave the country, or leave the area, or go somewhere else, you have learned how to be somewhat independent in your own training session. Or if the coach stops training, if the coach goes on holidays, you're okay, and for the purposes of training for life, as I like to say, that kind of coach is key.
And then, sorry,
Yeah, you're right.
Uninterrupted.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think I think like the key thing, and it's a common trend throughout the discussion that we've had is trying to build up longevity with regards to whatever it is that you want to do. It's no like you do see it quite a lot on Instagram and stuff now these days is, you know, the quick fixes and, you know, a quick fix is a quick fix for a reason. And a quick fix might help in the short term, but perhaps in the long term, well, in the long term, it's not sustainable because, you know, if you're looking to do something quick, short and sharp, and it's like, I suppose instant, anything that's instant can't have like a long term. It's not longevity. So I do
Yeah.
think that's an important factor in all of this is in with regards to fitness. And fitness lifestyle would be to have some form of longevity there. And by being by doing workouts and just going through the motions, it helps. But by understanding the kind of even a little bit more behind why it is you're doing something, it then gives you a mental aptitude to be able to say, well, if I did ever need to, like, you know, do this on my own, or if I wanted to actually then go and try and pursue this with regards to a career, or develop my knowledge on it further, at least I've got a strong foundation there then to proceed.
Exactly. Or even if your training ever starts becoming difficult because it's increasing in difficulty, you understand why the training is becoming difficult and that you don't give up. You know, so there's a big power behind it as well, for sure.
Mm.
For sure.
And I think as well with regards to, I suppose, with a coach can also be like a motivator as well. And
Mentor.
motivation, I suppose motivation was something that I wanted to kind of discuss. And it's something that I'm definitely seeing a hell of a lot of on social media, particularly, I would say, the last no, I wouldn't say 6 months, maybe 4 months, because I think, again, it's not as in, well, the gyms are closed, which is something that is obviously less than ideal for people who are working out and looking to do weight training, because they don't have the tools and the resources available to them that they previously had, and they kind of have to adapt and change the way that they approach things, I suppose, and make use of what they do have. And then also, like I already said, the weather, the climate, and maybe you just don't really want to work out in your house, or maybe you don't want to go out into the cold and the wet and go for a run or a walk. But motivation, I find there's always a reason why we do anything in life. Like there's always a reason
Of
why,
course.
regardless of whether we know, whether we consciously are aware of the reason why or not, there is a reason why. And I think motivation, people say, oh, how do I get motivated? Well, first of all, it's there's no straightforward answer to say, well, if you want to be motivated, you need to follow steps A, B, and C.
Mm.
And I do think having a coach or having someone, even in a like an external kind of form of accountability, definitely helps. But
Yes.
people do need to hold themselves accountable as well. In terms of motivation, like, would there be certain things or certain aspects of that you would kind of try to embed into your like routines or fitness journey, I suppose?
Well, first of all, motivation sometimes comes at a later stage for some people. You know, they're never actually going to be motivated to start doing the exercise for some individuals. The motivation will come later, however, and what they need is they need to be disciplined in their decision to begin exercising. Motivation will become once results start coming back, once the feelings of energies come. So for some individuals, if you are feeling unmotivated, but you are aware that you do need to begin some form of exercise, those individuals, I promise you, motivation will come. It might take a little while, a couple of weeks, once you start seeing results. But for those individuals, discipline and a decision to just say, right, I'm starting today and I'm going for it. You know, the next Monday, just get in on this, start this, and make it begin to motivation will come.
Yeah.
Then for other, like, you know, the other, because you have the other side of it where someone just gets super motivated and they're just like,
Yeah.
all right, I'm going straight in and cracked. Now, the key thing then for both those individuals is how to maintain motivation. And the key thing with maintaining motivation, because it's not going to be there. You are going to have days where you're going to be like, I hate the gym. Right? Like I have them. And right, even those super shredded people we talk about, believe it, they have days where they're like, I hate the gym, you know, like I don't want to be here. So the key thing for maintaining motivation is having, first of all, small goals along your way. So setting up, whether that be someone who's going to say, well, I'm looking to keep, let's say, hit a 5K in 25 minutes, you know, and they begin and they're hitting the 5K in 30 minutes. For them having saying, well, let's say we try and hit this 25 minutes in about 6 to 7 weeks. Already that 6 to 7 weeks, that individual is going to be motivated because they have a goal in mind. It's measurable, it's achievable, it's realistic, and it's also given a time constraint on it.
Yes.
So you've already motivated. So even if you are less motivated some days, you still know at the end of that 6 weeks you want to go for it. So whether that be a weight loss goal, whether it be a strength goal, whether it be the number of push-ups you can do, the number of burpees you can do, there's tons you can make up. Having a goal is key. The second thing is being able to then reflect on that goal accordingly when you get to the end of it, whether you achieve this or not. If you are successful in that goal, you need to reward yourself with something. You know, I now don't go nuts for rewarding yourself like a scoop of pints or something. Like it's like, you know, it could be having a meal or like, you know, having, you know, setting yourself that, you know, like giving yourself that little reward, that little break that you deserve. You know, buying yourself something could be a
new
very
pair of
effective
runners or
reward.
something.
New pair, exactly.
Yeah,
it can be, you know, it's huge, yeah, because you've earned it. And now, as soon as you reward yourself, not immediately, but within a close enough time frame, you know, a day or two, you then want to be there. So even if you didn't successfully achieve it, you then need to be nicely critical to yourself in a way, like, you know, so critical to yourself in a positive way, saying, well, why didn't you achieve it? Maybe 30 minutes down to 25 minutes was too much of a goal. Maybe it wasn't actually achievable for where I am at the minute. So what you do then is that's perfectly fine. It's not necessarily a failure, it's a point of learning.
The lesson and the learning, yeah.
Exactly. So when you're going forward, you can then make a more achievable goal. And then the next thing, so that's after, so you have your goal, you have your reward system, being able to reflect upon your progress that you've made. The last thing that's key is making a new goal. Okay, it's very, because a lot of the time people get to a goal and it's like high fives all around. And God, disaster.
Yeah.
And unless you're going to be a 5K runner or a, you know, a max deadlifter or one specific action, it is, if you're just going to be a general exerciser, it is very important that your goal is different from the last goal. Okay, it doesn't mean that you have to stop running your 5Ks and stuff, but it just means that you're giving your body something new in terms of what it can think and train
Another
towards
stimulus.
and gear towards. Exactly. You can still maintain your 5K performance, but it's novel enough and it's original enough that it's not going to be, because if you get 30 minutes down to 25 minutes, you're like, cool. And then you said, right, let's get that 25 minutes down to 20 minutes. You know, eventually you're just going to be like, I hate 5Ks.
Yeah,
right?
the first 5 minutes is easier to knock off than the next 5.
Yeah, and if you just keep going after, if you keep going after 5Ks, it becomes, you know, stale in terms of your brains, you know.
It can become a bit mundane, I suppose. Would be.
Exactly. So making a new goal that is different from the previous one is key in helping maintain your motivation. You should be able to maintain then motivation throughout full years of your training.
And something I read a book. It was called, I think it's on the shelf there. It's called Living with the Monks. What Turning My Phone Off taught me about gratitude, mindfulness, and there's something else. I can't remember the full title. But one of the quotes that I took from that, or one of the kind of analogies or paraphrases that I took from that was, when you're looking at doing something and you don't want to do it, ask yourself, if you do it today, how will it make you feel tomorrow? And then it becomes a much easier decision to do what you don't want to do today in order for yourself tomorrow to say, thanks, mate, well done. I know I didn't feel like it, but you did it. And now today I feel much better for doing it. So
100%. Like, there will be gym sessions and there will be exercise sessions where you just don't want to do them. But I can guarantee you, once you finish those once you actually complete them, you'll always be happy that you did it. You'll never, like, if you didn't want to do a session, you knocked it out and you're still feeling bad, something else is, like, there's something else wrong. Like,
something else
you know, something else, you might be sick or you might be ill, like, you know. But if you're finding yourself that you did the gym session, like, even when you don't want to do it, but you just get through it and you finally finish it, you'll always feel a sense of reward and a sense
of achievement as well.
Exactly. That you actually managed to defy what you thought, saying, "Oh no, I'm not going to make it," but you ended up getting through. So it's always good. Now, that being said, monitoring this, if it's happening very often, like every day of the week for a whole week or 2 weeks, that you really aren't feeling the gym session, maybe you are like that previous example we talked about, where you're pushing it that little bit too much. where you just need to kind of, rein off. So remember the whole thing about, we talking about the energy availability and stuff. So there is that would be kind of more towards the person who's doing a lot of training for themselves. However, for most people, just making sure that getting through their gym sessions, and like we mentioned before, adherence, as in they keep coming back and doing them in right order, they'll find themselves reaping the benefits of a long-term exercise program that is only going to do wonders for themselves.
I think that's brilliant, and hopefully people do kind of get a greater understanding for how they can kind of look to maintain that motivation, because again, look, it fluctuates, and it's something that's, you can't avoid that. There will be times when you don't want to do something, but sometimes it's just about turning up, and hopefully that's helpful. I think I don't want to keep you too much longer. I really do.
As long as you need, man. Yeah.
Really do appreciate you coming on, and like, I mean, the depth of knowledge that you have is phenomenal. And I kind of, when I was planning out the episode, I did kind of say to myself that, Jesus, like, we're not going to be able to like jam this into an hour, because, there's just so much to discuss. There's so much to discuss. And then within each kind of category of discussion, there's so much to discuss within that as well. So I really do. Thank you very much for sharing that knowledge.
No worries. And if going forward, people have questions, that they would like to, if there are areas within health and fitness that they would like to go more in depth into, I'm sure, like, dude, if you hang on to these and you compile these questions, I'm sure we can do another podcast at a later stage. So if, like, I'll be more than happy to, like, if people came specifically asking, well, what about doing this and all that, I'll be more than happy to discuss that as well. So for anyone.
And then as well, I think, well, obviously, just to let people know where they can find you and stuff. You've got, I know you've got Instagram. I think you've got a YouTube. I've watched a couple of those YouTube. I think I've definitely watched, I think, 2.
Oh, the YouTube is on and off, man. The YouTube channel is on and off.
To be honest, look, I'm the same. I'm the same with YouTube. I think it's just that little bit more effort to kind of sit down, record.
Demanding. Yeah.
Yeah, it's demanding, but the worst thing for me is just editing the actual video. That's the worst.
Yeah, I'm not an editor myself as well. It looks great, but at the end of it, you're talking 20 hours put away to put one of those together. Instagram, I do update very regularly, and that'll be the one.
Your Instagram handle is, I think it's
JO Fitness Nation.
And
that's it.
Yeah, JO Fitness Nation, and I'll leave that in the description of the podcast, and I'll be sure to tag it on social medias and stuff like that. I suppose before we wrap it up, and look, we can kind of keep these short and sweet as you'd like. 3 things that you're looking forward to when we get back to life as normal, or the new normal, because I know it's been a strange enough year for everyone.
Leaving the country. Not like bye mom, bye dad, never coming back. Just on holidays, going around, being cultured again, that kind of, definitely one of them. Another one would be seeing people in the office again. I'm on campus for a lot of my research, and at the minute it is very, very not lonely, but it's very isolating, as in I'll be sitting there, it's great, but it's every day I'm here on my own. And then finally, I would say EP, Lecture Picnic.
Yeah,
definitely. I've missed this, and after missing last year, sadly, probably going to miss this year as well. Like, I'll definitely be looking forward to a good lecture picnic, because it's always a nice way to end the summer and go into the new year on a big one.
Very good. And then lastly, is 3 things that, so obviously, like, this year has kind of forced us to adapt, change. Our habits and routines have been kind of flipped upside down, I suppose. I've definitely found that by being forced to change certain areas or aspects of my life, I would actually continue that change that I've made on into the future. Is there anything that you've kind of made a change about your life, and you've kind of said, well, actually, do you know what? This is something that I'm happy that I've made that change, and that I'll keep going forward.
I know that I can make we can make an hour out of this, but it would definitely be going sober. Which was a while ago, and I know that there'll probably be some other people that would be interested in hearing that as well. However, going sober for me, and learning, the hardest thing was learning how to do what I was doing beforehand whilst being sober, whilst not, so in other words, doing all the research I'm doing all the college work, doing all my training without having sessions on the weekend and stuff. Like, it was a big learning curve, big thing that my body had to get used to. However, now that I've gotten through the far side of it, and I'm now doing everything that I was doing beforehand and more without spending, you know, hundreds on, you know, drink and nights out and everything, like there's a big difference. Like, I'm not saying that I'll never drink again, but definitely going forward, living the sober life and living the riches, the more organic riches and the more
Yes.
organic benefits from life, I'm definitely enjoying them a lot more, like,
The
for
thing
sure.
of-
minus all the headaches as well, like,
Yeah. The
absolutely
thing of,
dying,
you know,
like.
living your best life, you know, truly living your best life, rather than
Yes.
living your best life and getting plastered every weekend maybe isn't your best life. It may be for some
Yeah,
people, but
it was fun, man. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
It was absolutely, it was unbelievable crack. But you know, it gets old, you know. And I'm not saying I enjoyed it to my fullest, and I'm happy now that I experienced that life, and I'm happy now that I've also managed to, you know, kind of work that part of my life out of me, as in, like, I don't necessarily, you know, how would you say, I'm no more reliant on this, and I'm no more, you know, dependent on, you know, these things and nights out to do what I need to do now. And I'm finding that I'm starting to love things that I never thought that I would love, you know, and get enjoyment from things that I never thought I would enjoy, you know, and everything feels a lot, you know, as I said, like earlier, I like the word organic, or a lot more natural to my own body, you know, things that I used to find incredibly boring, I'm now actually finding not too bad to deal with and stuff, you know. So it makes everything a lot easier to do other things, you know, whether it be my difficult tasks with the research and all that.
I suppose it helps you find balance, and that's what this is all about, is trying to find balance and what works for you, because it's going to work differently for everyone. But I do think, and look, we could talk for donkeys on the whole drinking sober. I'm doing dry January at the moment. I did dry January last year. And it's a kind of it's something that I'm playing with in my head and saying, look, do you just say go and do dry February as well and just see what happens? But
I would recommend for everyone to give it a, if to anyone who has ever thought about going sober, or anyone who's ever felt, you know what, these nights out are starting to get a bit too much, that's exactly where I was when I finally made the decision to kick it all, you know, just to not necessarily kick it off for good, but to begin by just taking a break. So for anyone who's listening, who is having those thoughts, you know, well, you know, like, this might be getting a bit too much, or nights out just aren't as fun as they used to be, they're the individuals that definitely should give some form of soberness a go, whether it be, right, I'm just going to knock it on the head for 4 weeks, or do a dry January, or do a dry February. I definitely highly recommend it to those individuals, because they might find there's other things that they've been missing out on, or other things that they'll rediscover from just taking a break and looking the other direction for a bit.
Absolutely. I think I'm going to just say one more piece, and then I'll let you go.
You're good, man.
Yeah,
you're cool. You're cool.
The thing that I've definitely found, and it's something that's been very much clear to see on social media, is that when people say, oh, well, I've nothing to do anymore, I can't do anything, and like, because of the lockdowns, the pubs and bars are open, like, I have nothing to do. Well, if the only thing that there is to do on the weekend is go out, drink, and get pissed and have a laugh, and I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that, I'm not trying to say that, but if if that's the only thing that you look forward to at the weekend, I think it's time to just reevaluate and look at your life and kind of say, well, actually, maybe reflect on the last kind of, 6 months or so, and say, what did I implement when I couldn't do what I wanted to do that I would keep? And I think that's a question to leave for everyone as we conclude the podcast. So I will love you and leave you. I will let you get back to your work. And thanks very, very much for coming on. It's been a fantastic conversation.
Likewise, Nathan. And thank you very much for having me on. I'm more than happy to chat again in the future as well.
Brilliant.